Marcus Chen had been farming the outer rim colony of Kepler 442b for 12 years, and in all that time he'd never seen anything like the creature dying in his wheat field. The morning mist still clung to the golden stalks when he discovered it. A scaled beast no larger than a house cat, its breathing shallow and labored. Its hide shimmered with an iridescent blue-green that seemed to shift and dance, even as life ebbed from its small form. Blood, darker than human blood and somehow thicker, pooled beneath its broken wing. Marcus knelt beside the creature, his weathered hands hovering uncertainly over its injured form. He'd seen plenty of the local wildlife in his years on this world, the rabbit-like hoppers, the bird analogues with their triple wings, even the occasional predator that looked like a cross between a wolf and a lizard. But this was different. This was something that shouldn't exist according to every xenobiology textbook ever written. The creature's eyes opened as he approached, eyes that held an intelligence that made Marcus's breath catch in his throat. They were the color of molten gold, and they looked at him with what could only be described as hope, or perhaps desperation. "Easy there, little one," Marcus whispered, the same tone he'd used with injured animals back on Earth. "Let me see what we can do about you." The creature made a sound, not quite a chirp, not quite a growl, but something musical that resonated in Marcus's chest. It tried to lift its head, failed, and the sound came again, weaker this time. Marcus had no idea what kind of first aid a creature like this might need, but he knew basic trauma care. The wing was clearly broken, twisted at an unnatural angle. There were deep gashes along its flanks, and one of its hind legs was bent wrong. Whatever had attacked this thing had meant business. He ran back to his farmhouse, a modest structure he'd built himself from local timber and imported polymer sheets. In his medical kit, standard issue for all frontier colonists, he found antiseptic, bandages, and a basic bone fuser that worked on most carbon-based life forms. At least, that's what the manual claimed. When he returned to the wheat field, the creature had dragged itself several meters closer to the farmhouse. It looked up at him with those golden eyes, and Marcus could swear it was trying to communicate something. Trust, maybe, or gratitude. "All right, let's see what we can do," he murmured, settling down beside the injured animal. The antiseptic spray made the creature flinch, but it didn't try to bite or claw him. If anything, it seemed to understand that Marcus was trying to help. The bone fuser was trickier. It was designed for human physiology, but Marcus figured bone was bone mostly. He activated the device and ran it slowly over the broken wing, watching as the creature's breathing seemed to ease slightly. The bandaging was the hardest part. The creature's hide was tougher than it looked, but also somehow more delicate. It reminded Marcus of handling silk, strong but requiring a gentle touch. As he worked, the creature made those musical sounds again, almost like it was talking to him. I know, Marcus said softly. "This probably hurts, but you're going to be okay. We'll get you fixed up." By the time he finished, the sun was climbing toward its zenith, and Marcus realized he'd spent the entire morning with this strange creature. He'd missed his usual routine of checking the irrigation systems and monitoring the crop sensors. But somehow, that didn't seem important right now. He fashioned a makeshift bed from an old shipping crate and some thermal blankets, placing it on his front porch where he could keep an eye on the creature. It settled into the bedding with obvious relief, those golden eyes never leaving his face. Marcus brought water first. The creature lapped it up eagerly, then tried various foods from his supplies. It showed no interest in the dried fruits or vegetables, but when he offered it a piece of synthetic protein, it devoured it hungrily. Carnivore, then, or at least omnivorous with a preference for meat. The rest of the day passed in a strange routine. Marcus would work for an hour, then check on his patient. Each time, the creature seemed a little stronger, a little more alert. By evening, it was able to lift its head and even make a few tentative movements with its injured wing. As night fell, Marcus found himself sitting on his porch, watching the creature sleep. The twin moons of Kepler 442b cast an eerie blue light over the farmland, and in that light, the creature's scales seemed to glow faintly. Marcus had seen bioluminescence in Earth animals before, but this was different. This was almost like the creature was storing moonlight in its scales. He was about to head inside when a sound stopped him cold. It came from somewhere out in the darkness beyond his fields, a roar that seemed to shake the very ground beneath his feet. It was a sound of loss, of rage, of desperate searching, and it was getting closer. The creature on his porch stirred, lifting its head and making that musical chirping sound again. But this time the sound was different, urgent, warning. Marcus understood then with a clarity that surprised him. The creature wasn't just any injured animal, it was a baby. And somewhere out there in the darkness, its mother was looking for it. Another roar split the night, closer this time. Marcus could hear trees crashing in the distance, and he caught a glimpse of something massive moving beyond the tree line. His farmhouse suddenly felt very small and very fragile. The baby dragon, because that's what it had to be, Marcus realized, a dragon from some impossible fairy tale, chirped again, more urgently this time. It was trying to tell him something. Trying to warn him. Marcus made a decision that would change everything. Instead of running for his emergency beacon or locking himself inside his reinforced storm cellar, he sat down next to the baby dragon and placed a gentle hand on its uninjured side. "It's okay," he said softly. "I understand. Your mother's coming for you." The roaring was very close now, and Marcus could see trees swaying as something enormous moved through the forest. The baby dragon looked up at him with those golden eyes, and Marcus saw something he hadn't expected. Concern. The little creature was worried about him. "Don't you worry about me," Marcus said, surprised by how calm his voice sounded. "I'm not going anywhere. If your mother wants to talk, we'll talk." The roaring stopped suddenly, and the silence that followed was somehow more frightening than the noise had been. Marcus could feel something watching him from the darkness, something vast and ancient and very, very angry. Then the trees at the edge of his property exploded outward, and she emerged. The mother dragon was nothing like her tiny offspring. She was enormous, easily the size of Marcus's farmhouse, with scales that seemed to absorb the moonlight rather than reflect it. Her eyes were the same molten gold as her baby's, but larger than dinner plates and burning with a fury that made Marcus's knees weak. She moved with surprising grace for something so large, flowing across his wheat field like a living shadow. The crops bent and parted before her, and Marcus realized she was being careful not to destroy his farm. Even in her rage, she was in control. When she was perhaps 50 meters away, she stopped and reared up on her hind legs, spreading wings that blotted out the stars. The roar that escaped her throat this time was different. Not rage, but grief. The sound of a mother who thought her child was dead. The baby dragon on the porch chirped urgently, trying to lift itself on trembling legs. The mother's massive head swung toward them, and Marcus found himself looking into eyes that held intelligence far beyond any animal he'd ever encountered. For a moment that seemed to last forever, dragon and human regarded each other across the moonlit farmyard. Marcus could feel the weight of that ancient gaze, judging him, evaluating him, deciding whether he was threat or ally. Then the baby dragon did something that changed everything. It pushed itself up on its good legs and hobbled the few steps to Marcus, pressing its small body against his side. The meaning was unmistakable. Protection, trust, affection. The mother dragon's expression shifted. The fury didn't disappear entirely, but it was joined by something else. confusion, perhaps, and maybe, just maybe, a flicker of gratitude. Marcus slowly stood up, keeping his movements gentle and non-threatening. The baby dragon stayed close to his side, looking up at its mother and making those musical sounds again. This time, the sound seemed almost conversational, as if the little creature was explaining what had happened. The mother listened, her massive head cocked to one side. Then she looked back at Marcus, and this time he saw recognition in those golden eyes. She understood that this small, fragile human had helped her child. Slowly, carefully, the mother dragon lowered herself to the ground. She was still enormous, still capable of crushing Marcus with a single step. But the gesture was clearly meant to be non-threatening, an offering of peace. Marcus took a deep breath and did the most insane thing he'd ever done in his life. He walked toward the dragon. Each step felt like it took forever. The baby dragon limped along beside him, chirping encouragement. The mother watched every movement, ready to strike if Marcus proved to be a threat after all. When he was close enough to touch her, Marcus stopped. The mother dragon's nostril was larger than his head, and he could feel the heat of her breath on his face. She studied him for a long moment, then did something that nearly made Marcus faint. She lowered her great head until it was level with his, close enough that he could see his reflection in her golden eyes. Then, very gently, she pressed her snout against his chest. The touch was feather-light despite her size, and Marcus understood it for what it was, a thank you. "You're welcome," he whispered, and meant it. The mother dragon pulled back and made a sound, not quite the musical chirping of her offspring, but something deeper, more resonant. It vibrated through Marcus's bones, and somehow he understood that she was telling him her name, or at least what she was called. The baby dragon chirped again and struggled to climb onto its mother's lowered head. She helped it gently, lifting it with movements so careful that Marcus was reminded of his own mother helping him when he was sick as a child. As the baby settled onto its mother's head, it looked back at Marcus one more time. Those golden eyes seemed to be making a promise. They would remember this kindness. The mother dragon rose to her full height again, her child secure on her head. She looked down at Marcus one more time, then spread her wings and launched herself into the air with a power that shook the ground beneath Marcus's feet. Marcus watched until they disappeared into the star-filled sky, then sat down heavily on his porch steps. His hands were shaking, and he realized he was grinning like an idiot. He'd just provided first aid to a dragon and lived to tell about it. More than that, he'd made contact with an intelligent alien species that wasn't supposed to exist. The xenobiology texts were wrong. Life on Kepler 442b was far stranger and more wonderful than anyone had imagined. As he sat there in the moonlight, Marcus noticed something lying in the grass where the baby dragon had been resting. He walked over and picked it up, a single scale about the size of his palm that seemed to hold its own inner light, a gift, a reminder, a promise that this wasn't the end of the story. Marcus Chen, farmer and apparently amateur xenologist, went inside his farmhouse that night with the certain knowledge that his quiet life on the frontier had just become a lot more interesting. And despite the danger, despite the impossibility of it all, he couldn't wait to see what came next. 3 weeks had passed since the night Marcus Chen had treated a dying dragon hatchling, and life on his farm had developed a new rhythm. Every morning, he would find small gifts beside his water pump, unusual stones that seemed to glow with inner fire, strange flowers that didn't match any of the local flora, and once, a piece of metal that his scanner couldn't identify, but that hummed with some kind of energy. Marcus kept the gifts in a special box, understanding instinctively that they were tokens of gratitude from the dragon family. But more than that, they seemed to be an invitation, a way of saying that the relationship between human and dragon was far from over. The change in his daily routine went beyond mysterious gifts. Marcus found himself spending more time scanning the skies, looking for signs of the massive creatures he now knew lived somewhere on this world. He'd researched everything he could find about Kepler 442b's original surveys, looking for any mention of large fauna that might have been dismissed or overlooked. What he found was troubling. The original survey teams had noted atmospheric disturbances in the northern mountain ranges, areas that were subsequently declared off-limits to colonists due to unstable weather patterns. Looking at the data now, Marcus realized those weren't weather patterns at all. They were the thermal signatures of creatures too large for the survey team to believe could exist. The implications were staggering. How many other colony worlds harbored intelligent life that humans had simply failed to recognize? How many species had been displaced or endangered by human expansion without anyone even knowing they existed? Marcus was pondering these questions while repairing a section of fence damaged by one of the local grazers when he heard the sound. It was faint at first, a rhythmic thrumming that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. He straightened up, his hand shading his eyes as he scanned the afternoon sky. She came from the north, flying low over the forest canopy. Even at a distance, there was no mistaking the massive form of the mother dragon. But this time, she wasn't alone. 3 other dragons flew in formation behind her, 2 that were nearly her size and 1 that was smaller, though still larger than the hatchling Marcus had treated. As they approached his farm, Marcus could see the differences between them. The mother's scales were the deep blue-black he remembered. But one of her companions had scales that shifted from green to gold in the sunlight. The third large dragon was a rusty red color, and the smaller one, perhaps a juvenile, was silver-white with edges that caught the light like knife blades. They circled his farm once, a sight so impossible that Marcus had to remind himself it was really happening. Then, with grace that defied their size, all 4 dragons landed in his largest field, careful to avoid his crops. The mother dragon carried something in her front claws, something large and metallic that she set down gently before looking toward the farmhouse. When her golden eyes found Marcus standing by the fence, she made that same deep, resonant sound he remembered from their first meeting. Marcus took a deep breath and walked toward them. As he got closer, he could see that what the mother dragon had brought was some kind of device. It was roughly cylindrical, about the size of a small barrel, and covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change even as he looked at them. The green-gold dragon stepped forward and made a different sound, higher pitched than the mother's voice, but with complex harmonics that suggested language. Marcus couldn't understand the meaning, but he could hear the intelligence in it, the deliberate communication. "I wish I could understand you," Marcus said aloud, feeling slightly foolish for talking to creatures that almost certainly didn't speak English. That's when the device activated. Lights began to run along its surface in patterns that hurt Marcus's eyes to follow. The air around it shimmered. And suddenly Marcus could hear something impossible, words in his own language, though spoken with an accent unlike anything he'd ever heard. "We greet the small healer," the voice said, halting and careful. "We come with gratitude and purpose." Marcus stared at the device, then at the dragons. The green-gold one was watching him intently, and Marcus realized it had been the source of the translated words. "You can speak English?" he asked, then immediately felt stupid. Of course they couldn't speak English. The device was translating somehow. "We learn your word sounds," the green-gold dragon replied through the translator. "From your communication waves, your people speak much. Into the air." Marcus realized they meant radio transmissions. Somehow, these creatures had been listening to human broadcasts and learning the language. The technical implications alone were staggering, but right now Marcus was more concerned with the immediate situation. "Why have you come?" he asked. The mother dragon stepped forward and spoke, her voice emerging from the translator with what sounded like urgency. Our young one lives because of you, but danger comes. Others of your kind seek to harm us. What do you mean? Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. The red dragon spoke next, its voice coming through the translator as a deep bass rumble. Sky metal with fire sticks came yesterday. They hunt us with sound seekers and fire that burns from far. Marcus's blood ran cold. Military vessels. Someone had sent armed ships to hunt the dragons. Who? He demanded. Who sent them? The silver-white dragon, which Marcus now realized was indeed a juvenile, spoke in a voice that was translated as young and frightened. They wear the marks of the metal mountain makers. It took Marcus a moment to understand what that meant. Metal mountain makers. Strip miners. The kind of corporations that moved in after the colony surveys were complete, looking for valuable resources to extract and ship back to Earth. Meridian mining, Marcus whispered, recognizing the description. They'd been sniffing around Kepler 442b for months, claiming they had rights to prospect in the uninhabited northern regions. The mother dragon stepped closer, and Marcus could see pain in her golden eyes. They take our eggs, she said through the translator. They burn our nests. They think we are beasts without mind. How many of you are there? Marcus asked. We're many, the green-gold dragon replied. Now, few, very few. Marcus felt sick. These creatures were intelligent, peaceful, and they were being hunted to extinction by humans who saw them as nothing more than dangerous animals to be eliminated. It was the story of human expansion written in fire and blood across the galaxy. What do you want from me? He asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. The mother dragon spoke again, and this time her words came through the translator with desperate hope. You are different. You heal instead of harm. Will you speak for us? To your people? Marcus looked around at the four dragons, ancient, intelligent beings who were asking him, a simple farmer, to somehow save their species from extinction. The rational part of his mind screamed that this was impossible, that he was nobody, that he had no authority or influence to stop a military operation backed by a powerful corporation. But then he remembered the trust in the hatchling's golden eyes, the gentle way its mother had touched his chest in gratitude. These creatures had chosen to trust him with their secret, their language, their hope for survival. I'll try, he said, and meant it. But I'm going to need proof. Evidence that you're intelligent, that you're not just animals. Something that will make the colonial authority listen. The red dragon and the green-gold one exchanged what Marcus could only describe as a look. Then the green-gold dragon spoke. We will show you, but first, you must come with us. Come with you where? To our home. To see what your people seek to destroy. Marcus looked up at the dragon's massive forms, then at the device that was somehow translating their language in real time. Every rational instinct told him that following a group of giant alien predators to their secret lair was a terrible idea. But every moral instinct told him that these creatures needed his help, and he might be their only chance. How? He asked. The mother dragon lowered herself to the ground and gestured with one wing toward her broad back. We will carry you, if you trust us. Marcus Chen had made a lot of difficult decisions in his life, leaving Earth to farm on a frontier world, building a life alone on an alien planet, staying to treat an injured creature when the safe thing would have been to call for help. But this decision felt like the most important one he'd ever make, not just for himself, but for two species that were balanced on the edge of war or peace. I trust you, he said, and meant it. Climbing onto the back of a dragon was not something Marcus had ever imagined he would do. The mother dragon's scales provided good handholds, and she waited patiently as he figured out how to settle himself between the massive shoulder muscles that powered her wings. The other dragons gathered around, and Marcus could feel their attention on him like a physical weight. Then, with a sensation that defied description, they were airborne. Marcus had flown in aircraft before, but this was entirely different. There was no engine noise, no vibration, just the whisper of wind over scales and the powerful rhythm of wings that seemed to beat in harmony with his own heartbeat. Below them, his farm shrank to a tiny square of cultivated land in an ocean of wilderness. They flew north, toward the mountain ranges that had been declared off-limits to human colonists. As they climbed higher, Marcus could see why the early surveys had detected atmospheric disturbances. The air itself seemed to shimmer with energy, and his skin tingled with something that felt like static electricity, but more alive. The mountains grew larger as they approached, revealing themselves to be far more massive than Marcus had imagined. These weren't the gentle hills marked on his colonial maps. These were true peaks, reaching toward the sky with snow-covered summits that gleamed in the afternoon sun. And everywhere, carved into the mountainsides, were structures that definitely weren't natural. The dragons had built cities, not cities as humans might understand them, but something entirely other. Vast chambers had been carved into the living rock, their entrances wide enough for the largest dragon to pass through easily. Terraces and platforms jutted out from the cliff faces, connected by graceful arches that seemed to defy gravity. And everywhere, the stone itself seemed to glow with that same inner light Marcus had seen in the hatchling's scales. "My God," Marcus whispered, and felt the mother dragon's attention shift to him. "We call it Heartstone Place," her voice came through the translator device, which the green-gold dragon was somehow operating in flight. "Our home for many turning times." "How long?" Marcus asked. "Since before your people looked to the stars." They were ancient. These creatures had been building their civilization while humans were still discovering fire. As they flew deeper into the mountains, Marcus began to see the damage. Scorch marks on the cliff faces where energy weapons had been fired, collapsed terraces, empty caves that should have been full of life, and in the distance, the angular metallic shapes of human military vessels hovering like mechanical vultures over the destruction. The mother dragon's flight path took them past what had clearly been a nursery, wide, shallow caves designed to house eggs and young dragons. Now it was a crater, still smoking from recent bombardment. "They came 3 days ago." The red dragon's voice was full of grief. "Took the eggs that survived. Shot the mothers who tried to protect them." Marcus felt rage building in his chest, hot and pure. This wasn't pest control or necessary defense. This was genocide, carried out by his own species against beings that had been peaceful until humans arrived. They landed on a high platform carved into the mountainside, and Marcus slid down from the mother dragon's back on trembling legs. The view from here was breathtaking. The entire mountain range spread out below them, with dragon cities carved into every peak. But it was a dying view. Too many of the caves were dark, too many of the platforms empty. The green-gold dragon moved to the translator device and spoke at length, its words coming through in English with increasing fluency as the machine adapted to the conversation. "We are the Skyborn," it said. "We have lived in harmony with this world for 50,000 of your years. We tend the high places, guide the weather, maintain the balance between earth and sky. When your people came, we withdrew to the mountains. We thought there was room for both species." "But the miners found you," Marcus said. "They found our nesting grounds first, found the stones we used to store sunlight and thought they were valuable minerals. When we tried to protect our young..." The dragon's voice trailed off. Marcus understood. The dragons had defended their children, and the humans had seen only monsters attacking their operations. How many of you are left? Perhaps 200 adults, fewer than 50 young. The mother dragon's voice was heavy with sorrow. At this rate, we will be gone within a generation. Marcus walked to the edge of the platform, looking out over the vast scope of the dragon civilization. Somewhere out there, corporate soldiers were hunting the last members of a species that had existed since before human history began. And they were doing it in humanity's name, for humanity's benefit. I need to get back, Marcus said suddenly. I need to contact the Colonial Authority, the Xenological Institute, anyone who will listen. This is first contact with an intelligent alien species. There are protocols, laws that your miners ignore, the red dragon said bitterly. Then we make them pay attention, Marcus replied, surprised by the determination in his own voice. We make this so public, so undeniable, that they can't ignore it. The silver-white dragon, who had been quiet during most of the conversation, suddenly looked up at the sky with alarm. It spoke rapidly in its own language, and the translator device crackled as it tried to keep up. Ships come, it said. Many ships. They have found us. Marcus looked up and saw them. A dozen military vessels emerging from the clouds, their weapons already charging with ominous light. The mother dragon moved protectively over Marcus, her wings spread wide. You must go, she said urgently. Take the word speaker device. Tell your people what you have seen. I'm not leaving you to face this alone, Marcus protested. One human cannot stop this, the green-gold dragon said, but its voice held new hope. But one human with truth, perhaps that human can change everything. The first energy blast struck the mountain below them, and the entire platform shook with the impact. The dragons around Marcus began to spread their wings, preparing for a battle they couldn't win. Marcus grabbed the translator device, surprised by how light it was, and looked into the mother dragon's golden eyes one more time. I'll stop this, he promised. Somehow, I'll find a way. We know, she said simply. That is why we chose to trust the small healer. Then Marcus was flying again, clinging to the green-gold dragon's back as they dove away from the battle and toward his farm. Behind them, the sounds of combat echoed through the mountains, the roar of dragons and the scream of human weapons locked in a conflict that only one of them could win. But Marcus Chen, farmer and unlikely ambassador, carried with him proof that would change everything. In his hands was a device that could translate an alien language, testimony to the intelligence and peacekeeping nature of the Skyborn. Now he just had to figure out how to use it to save a species from extinction before it was too late. Marcus Chen stood in the communication center of New Geneva Colony's administrative complex, the dragon translation device humming softly on the table before him. Around him, the most powerful people on Kepler 442b sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they had just heard. Colonial Governor Patricia Santos was the first to speak, her voice carefully controlled. Mr. Chen, you understand what you're claiming here? That you've made contact with an intelligent alien species that Meridian Mining has been exterminating, Marcus finished bluntly. Yes, Governor, that's exactly what I'm claiming. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the colony's chief xenobiologist, leaned forward to examine the translation device more closely. This technology is beyond anything in our current understanding. The quantum processing power required to translate language in real time, to bridge not just linguistic, but conceptual gaps between species. She trailed off, shaking her head in amazement. General Morrison, the ranking military officer present, was less impressed. Even if this is legitimate, and I'm not saying it is, Meridian Mining has colonial authority approval for their operations. They're operating under anti-predator protocols that were established after the Vega 7 incident. Marcus felt anger rise in his chest. These aren't predators, General. They're farmers, gardeners. They've been maintaining the atmospheric balance of this world for 50,000 years. They're the reason this planet was habitable for human colonization in the first place." "So you say," Morrison replied. "But we have footage of these creatures attacking mining operations, destroying equipment worth millions of credits. How do we know they aren't simply mimicking intelligence? We've seen examples of sophisticated behavioral adaptation in non-sentient species before." That's when the device on the table spoke. "We understand your doubt," the voice said in perfect English. All eyes turned to the translator as it continued. "We have been listening to your words, learning. We wish to speak for ourselves." The room erupted in chaos. Half the officials jumped back from the device while the others leaned forward in fascination. Governor Santos raised her hand for silence. What are you?" she asked. "I am called Sky Singer in your words. I am speaker for the Skyborn. I carry the voice of my people to yours." Dr. Vasquez was practically vibrating with excitement. "This is incredible. You're speaking through some kind of quantum entanglement communication system, aren't you? Your consciousness is somehow linked to this device across space." "Not consciousness," Sky Singer's voice replied. "Memory, knowledge, what you might call recorded wisdom. I died 3 days ago defending our young from your fire weapons. But before death, I placed my voice patterns into this device, so I could speak truth to those who would listen." The silence that followed was profound. Marcus could see the impact of those words on everyone in the room. This wasn't just first contact, this was a ghost, speaking from beyond death to testify to humanity's actions. General Morrison cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Even assuming this is genuine, the colonial authority has to consider human safety first. These creatures are enormous, powerful. We have never harmed a human except in defense of our children," Sky Singer's voice interrupted. "In 50,000 years of existence, we have never initiated violence. We are the gardeners of sky and storm. We nurture life, not destroy it." Governor Santos looked around the room, clearly struggling with the implications. "Mr. Chen, the video evidence you've provided, the recordings of the Dragon Cities, if this is authentic, we're looking at the greatest discovery in human history, but also the greatest crisis." "It's authentic," Marcus said firmly. "I've been there." "I've seen their civilization. They're dying, Governor. While we're sitting here debating, Meridian's forces are systematically destroying an entire species." "A species that predates human civilization," Dr. Vasquez added, her voice filled with awe. "The scientific implications alone, we could learn more about planetary ecosystems, about atmospheric management, about sustainable civilization than in a century of research." "And the legal implications?" added Colony Legal Counsel James Wright, speaking for the first time. "If we can establish that these creatures are intelligent beings with legal standing, Meridian Mining is guilty of genocide under colonial law. The penalties for xenocide are severe." General Morrison stood abruptly. "This is all speculation based on unverified evidence provided by a single colonist and a device of unknown origin. I recommend we proceed with caution and maintain support for Meridian's operations until we can—" He was interrupted by the sound of alarms throughout the complex. A junior officer burst into the conference room, his face pale with urgency. "Governor, we're receiving emergency transmissions from Meridian Base. They're under attack by multiple large aerial contacts. They're requesting immediate military support." Marcus felt his heart sink. The dragons had finally been pushed too far. Sky Singer's voice emerged from the translator with deep sadness. "Our patience has ended. The Flame Bearer leads our last warriors to reclaim our stolen young. Your soldiers will have fire and fury." "How many?" Morrison demanded. "All who remain capable of flight," Sky Singer replied. "Perhaps 160 adults. They go to die for their children knowing they cannot win." Governor Santos was on her feet now, pacing behind her chair. This is a disaster. If there's a battle between Meridian forces and these creatures, it won't matter whether they're intelligent or not. The colonial authority will declare them a threat to human settlement and authorize complete elimination. Marcus stepped forward. Then stop it. You have the authority to recall Meridian's mining rights, to declare a ceasefire. Based on what? Morrison shot back. The word of a single colonist and an alien device, the Colonial Senate would have my head. That's when Dr. Vasquez stood up, her expression determined. Based on this, she activated her personal communication device and connected it to the room's main display. Images began to appear, detailed scans, biological readings, atmospheric data. I took the liberty of analyzing the samples Mr. Chen provided, she explained. The dragon scale, the atmospheric readings from the mountain regions, the energy signatures of their technology. This isn't just evidence of intelligence, it's evidence of a species that has been actively maintaining this planet's ecosystem for millennia. The images on the display showed complex atmospheric patterns, temperature regulations, and electromagnetic field modulations that covered the entire planet. They're not just intelligent, Dr. Vasquez continued. They're the reason Kepler 442b is habitable. The atmospheric composition that allows humans to breathe, the stable weather patterns, the lack of the severe electromagnetic storms we see on similar worlds, it's all being maintained by the dragons. Governor Santos stared at the data in amazement. Are you saying they're terraforming the planet? I'm saying they already terraformed it, thousands of years before humans arrived, and they're still maintaining it. If they die out, this world becomes uninhabitable within a generation. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Without the dragons, New Geneva Colony and all the human settlements on Kepler 442b would be doomed. Marcus seized the moment. You want proof they're intelligent? You want proof they're not a threat? Let me go to the battle. Let me try to negotiate a ceasefire. Absolutely not, Morrison replied immediately. Sending a civilian into an active combat zone is the only chance we have, Marcus interrupted. They trust me. I saved one of their young. If anyone can convince them to stop fighting, it's me. Skysinger's voice emerged from the translator again. The small healer speaks wisdom. Our people know him as friend. But time grows short. The flame-bearer's rage burns hot, and Meridian's weapons are strong. Many will die before either side yields. Governor Santos looked around the room, then made a decision that would echo through history. Dr. Vasquez, compile all your data and prepare a full report for the Colonial Senate. Mr. Wright, draft emergency legislation recognizing the Skyborn as an intelligent species under colonial law. General Morrison, prepare a complete stand-down order for all military operations in the northern regions. Morrison's face was red with anger. Governor, you're exceeding your authority. The Colonial Senate will thank me for preventing a war that would have destroyed humanity's first contact with an intelligent alien species, Santos interrupted firmly. Mr. Chen, you'll have a military escort to the battle site, but you'll be going in under a flag of truce. Can you stop this? Marcus looked at the translation device, then at the faces around him. Fear, hope, determination, and responsibility all mixed together. I can try, he said. The flight to the battle site took 20 minutes in a military transport, but it felt like hours. Marcus could see the combat from kilometers away, streams of energy fire crossing the sky, explosions lighting up the mountainsides, and dark shapes diving and wheeling through the smoke like living nightmares. As they approached, Marcus could see the scope of the destruction. The Meridian mining complex was in ruins, its defensive towers toppled and its main buildings burning. But the dragons were paying a heavy price. Marcus could see several massive forms lying motionless on the ground, their scales dim and lifeless. Set us down on that ridge, Marcus told the pilot. and broadcast this on all frequencies. He activated the translation device and spoke into it, knowing that Skysinger would relay his words to the Skyborn in the battle below. This is Marcus Chen, the small healer. I carry words from the human leaders. They acknowledge the Skyborn as intelligent beings. They order all human weapons to cease fire. I ask for the same from the dragons. For a moment, nothing changed. The battle continued to rage below them. Then, one by one, the dragons began to pull back from their attack runs. They circled the ruined mining complex, their massive forms blotting out the sun, but they held their fire. On the human side, the response was more chaotic. Some units ceased firing immediately, but others continued to shoot at any dragon that came within range. Marcus grabbed the transport's communication system. This is Marcus Chen speaking under authority of Governor Santos. All Meridian units cease fire immediately. The Colonial Authority has declared a ceasefire. Chen? The voice that came back was rough with battle fatigue. This is Colonel Hayes, Meridian Security Forces. I don't recognize your authority. My orders are to eliminate the threat to our operations. Your operations are terminated, Marcus replied. Meridian's mining rights have been revoked. You're no longer authorized to operate on Kepler 442b. There was a pause, then Hayes's voice again, filled with anger. The hell they have. Nobody's revoking anything based on the word of some dirt farmer who's been talking to animals. That's when the largest dragon Marcus had ever seen descended from the smoke-filled sky. It was even bigger than the mother dragon who had carried him, ancient beyond measure, with scales that seemed to hold the memory of starlight. This had to be the Flame Bearer, the leader of the dragon attack. The massive creature landed directly in front of the Meridian command bunker, and when it spoke, its voice carried clearly across the battlefield without need for translation. I am Flame Bearer, eldest of the Skyborn. You have stolen our young. You have murdered our people. You have broken the ancient peace. For this, you will answer. The dragon's mouth began to glow with inner fire, and Marcus realized he was about to witness something that would end any chance of peace between the species. Without thinking, Marcus jumped from the transport and ran down the slope toward the dragon, shouting as loudly as he could. Flame Bearer, I carry words from my people. They offer justice for the crimes against your kind. The massive dragon turned its attention to Marcus, and he found himself looking into eyes that held the weight of millennia. The glow in the dragon's throat dimmed slightly. Small healer. Flamebearer's voice rumbled like distant thunder. You speak of justice, but I see only death and theft. Our eggs are gone. Our children are caged in your metal ships. What justice can your people offer that will return the dead to life? Marcus activated the translation device, and Skysinger's voice emerged from it. Honored Flamebearer, the humans have acknowledged our intelligence. Their laws protect thinking beings from harm. The killers will face judgment under human law. And our stolen young? Flamebearer demanded. Marcus looked up at the dragon, then at the smoking ruins around them, then made a promise he wasn't sure he could keep. I'll get them back, he said simply. All of them. I give you my word. The dragon studied him for a long moment, then something unexpected happened. Flamebearer began to laugh, a sound like distant thunder rolling across mountains. You are a strange creature, small healer. You promised to face an armed human force and take back our children. You who are no larger than one of our claws. I'm not going alone, Marcus replied, surprising himself with his certainty. The Colonial Authority will back me. They know now what's at stake. Flamebearer's expression grew serious again. And if they do not? If your people choose profit over justice? Marcus looked around at the devastation, at the bodies of dragons and humans alike scattered across the battlefield, and made the decision that would define the rest of his life. Then I'll do it anyway, he said, because it's the right thing to do. The dragon's eyes widened slightly. and Marcus realized he had just said something that surprised one of the most ancient beings on the planet. "You would stand against your own kind for ours?" "I would stand for justice," Marcus replied, "for both our kinds." Flamebearer lowered his massive head until he was level with Marcus, much as the mother dragon had done weeks before. "Then you have more fire in your spirit than most creatures 10 times your size, small healer. Very well. We will trust in your word. But know this, if our children are not returned, if justice is not done, then this peace ends. And when it ends, we will not hold back our flames." Marcus nodded, understanding the weight of what he had just committed to. "I understand." As the dragon straightened up and began to withdraw, Marcus heard Colonel Hayes's voice over the communication system. "Chen! Whatever you think you've accomplished here, it won't last. Meridian has too much invested in this operation to walk away because of some farmer's pet monsters." Marcus activated the communication system one more time, his voice carrying across the battlefield to every human and dragon present. "Then Meridian is going to learn something about humans they didn't know before," he said. "Sometimes we keep our promises, no matter what it costs." As the dragons began to withdraw to the mountains and the human forces pulled back to their base camps, Marcus Chen stood alone on the battlefield and contemplated the impossible task ahead of him. He had to convince a powerful corporation to release stolen dragon eggs, persuade the colonial authority to enforce laws against genocide, and somehow prevent a war between species. But looking up at the retreating forms of the dragons, remembering the trust in a hatchling's golden eyes and the gratitude in its mother's touch, Marcus knew he would find a way. After all, he was human. And sometimes, humans achieved the impossible. 3 months later, the first skyborn human cultural exchange was established in the mountains of Kepler 442b. The dragon eggs were returned under colonial authority mandate, Meridian Mining faced charges of xenocide, and Marcus Chen was appointed as the first human skyborn ambassador. But that's another story entirely.